G'day Mark, and welcome to SA Rugby Magazine. Let's catch up on where we are in terms of the World Rugby and restarts and the various things that are being talked about. One of them is the medical proposal to scrap scrum restarts, team huddles, etc.
Yeah, geez. I mean,
what's the point?
Well, you see a lot of the players coming out and saying, well, as Tana Umaga once asked, is this tiddlywinks we playing when they said he couldn't tackle too hard? They're saying, do you want us to play a game of touch? If you're going to stop a scrum reset, stop the ruck, stop the tackle, stop everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, the players who have been in training the most in New Zealand, in rugby union, have obviously been the 5 New Zealand franchises. And in Australia, the National Rugby League, they've been in training. They start later this week in their first matches. And there's been absolutely no complaints from players.
No.
They've had contact sessions, they've had scrums, they've had scrum resets, they've all been tested.
Well, Mark, we're living in a politically correct world where everything is just amplified. The noise, the level. I mean, what's your take on Corona, the whole COVID thing, and how we're dealing with it?
Look, I just think that it's there, obviously, but there's so much hysteria, and there's been so much hysteria around it, and because of the unknown factor, the world has and sport has gone to the extreme of just cancelling everything in terms of the crowds that are there.
Well, they've almost been forced to, because if they don't do if they don't do all the correct things, they're going to be absolutely crucified by the media, who's looking for any tad bit to keep perpetuating their clickbait.
I mean, without a doubt, we spoke about last week. We spoke about when the EPL players were tested, and 8.
I think it was 6.
6 were tested out of 748 were tested positive, and 3 of those were players. 3 were support staff. And the news story in the media was 6 players test positive. Yeah. Is this going to put the restart in doubt? Yeah. When 742 tested negative, you know? Yeah. And we've had 2 rounds of Bundesliga.
And 3 of those players were from Watford who
don't want to play because they want to challenge the thing and not go down. Yeah. But we've had 2 rounds of the Bundesliga. There's been absolutely no complaints from players. They've kind of got on with it. We spoke pre the show that it's going to be interesting once rugby starts in New Zealand to see a contact sport played without a crowd. Yeah. We've seen soccer played without a crowd and it seems quite soulless. It looks like a practice run. Players thrive on adrenaline and they thrive on that crowd noise and the antagonism or the support of a crowd.
What I don't understand, Mark, is this. When you all the precautions, all this, coming out of separate tunnels, but then when you get onto the field, you're tackling each other. Well, you're getting tested before each game, so I'm assuming that all the tests are coming back negative. So every single person at that stadium is negative. So what's with all the hysteria?
Well, the absurdity when I looked in the Bundesliga was that the 5 substitutes had to wear masks, but within 15 minutes they may be on the field without a mask,
puffing and panting,
and obviously kind of sweating and.
Well, I did an article, The World's Gone Mad. It has gone mad. Hysteria, misinformation, you know. Anyway, let's not get on.
But it's a bit like if you look at the medical fraternity and you look at my history of reporting on rugby, working with the Springboks. If you had to take medical expertise on face value, a player would never get on the field.
Of course.
Because medically, half of them shouldn't be there with the injuries that they carry, the kind of knocks that they take. But they do get on the field and they play every weekend and they kind of give us great entertainment value and they accept that's their profession and the consequence that comes with it. So there's been such an extreme, and it's good to see the reaction from the players, the rugby players I'm talking about now, and the NRL players saying, nonsense, we want scrums, we want to tackle, we want to get out there and play again. We've taken all the precautions. We're not going to be stupid about it. And you know, it's that thing for me is be reasonable, don't be irrational. So they're going to wipe the balls down. They're going to change their jerseys at halftime. They're going to change their headgear. They're going to kind of do that kind of stuff. But for that 40 minutes that they're on the field in the mud and the slush, their hands are going to be dirty. The ball's going to be dirty. You can't sanitize the game. And I just think it has reached absurd proportions. And once the games start again, and within a month, there's not going to be an issue, I think a lot of the other rugby playing nations are going to look and think, why didn't we start first when it had cleared up? And you know, kudos to New Zealand for the way they've done it. And they've been very clear about when they were going to start, when they went back into training. And you saw the Hurricanes players the other day, middle of training, bucketing down with rain and an earthquake. They said that was their biggest fear. It was not coronavirus, it was the earthquake that they kind of had to endure training. So when I see no reset scrums, no this, no that, it's just nonsense. Either start it and start it properly, or then don't start it at all.
Absolutely. I fully agree. And one of the things being talked about is the championship being played in Australia, in Perth, I'd imagine.
Yeah, so the talk, which obviously favours Australia the most, in terms of the least amount of travel, but the Australian-New Zealand borders look like they will be open, and there may be a special dispensation for the Springboks.
Well, they're allowing travel from New Zealand now, aren't
Yes.
they, into Australia and vice versa?
Yeah. And then there may be a special dispensation, Argentina and then the Springboks, to go there to quarantine for 2 weeks, and then to be based there for 4 weeks to 6 weeks or whatever it's going to be, and play a shortened version of the Rugby Championship. Play it just in one area, and they played the shortened version in the World Cup year. No one complained about it. We won it. They need to give broadcasters matches, and I don't think we'd have an issue going there and playing Australia in Perth, playing the All Blacks in Perth. I know the All Blacks have never had an issue. If you look at their away record, it's as good as their home record. And
the biggest concern is how are they going to get there? Swim?
Yeah, they would have to get there, but they're talking about August.
Yeah, but Emirates aren't operating until October, from what I understand.
Well, if they go in the rowboats, they're going to be bloody conditioned by the time they get there.
Can you imagine?
You may just find that the only rugby that does get played at that stage is 4 Bledisloe Cup Test matches. Oh my God, all 4 in Perth as well.
I'll take it, but I'm getting fed up with these empty stadiums, and also just getting a bit fed up with the political interference, the political lack of intelligence and communication. I think a lot of people are getting fed up, and I'm seeing a lot of families, a lot of colleagues, a lot of workers that are really struggling out there.
No, without a doubt. And what I've liked about, I look at the New Zealand program and I look at the NRL program, they've said behind closed doors now, but in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, we want to see an integration of people back in there. Because as they've integrated people back into normal walks of life, they can integrate them back into a stadium. And we spoke about this previously as well. If a stadium takes 40,000, why can't you have 10,000 there and have them at certain physical distancing to watch the game? You have 40,000 commuters on a tube. You have them at a bus rank.
Well, the reality is we can't stop. We can do things to help prevent the spread. But the thing's going to spread. I mean, back in 1958, the big flu was the Asian flu, which was influenza, which they estimated affected 9 million people, that killed between 1 and 2 million people. I didn't even know that it was called influenza or the Asian flu until I had to read up on it. But there was no social media, and the press was far more responsible than they were now.
Well, I just if I look at the States and I look at the UK. A week ago, every headline was about another death. And now it's dropped down to 6th, 7th. The fact that there's only 45 deaths yesterday in London was not the lead story. That should have been the lead story.
Yeah.
The fact that there's been so many recoveries. The fact that Spain has opened its international borders, saying to tourists, come, you'll have to quarantine when you get here, but you can holiday now. Italy's done the same.
Quarantine for 14 days?
Yeah.
Why would anybody go to quarantine for 14 days?
Well, in a beautiful luxury palace. In a resort, but they are opening their borders for international travel. So is Italy, and Ireland reported no deaths for the first time since February. Those are the good news stories to show.
Did they not report the deaths of people being hit by a car?
No, because no other deaths do get reported, and that's the thing that we've been talking about. Is people are dying, unfortunately, every day, but it's as if it's never happened. And the only death that there's ever been is a coronavirus linked death. And there's also never been a...
What's man's aversion to death? Besides the obvious. I mean, it's part of life. Mark, it drives me around the bend. It drives me around the bend.
Look, when I go back to, and we've been chatting about it for the last 61 days, but I've struggled to find that you've really got to kind of go into some strange places to try and get the information of, if there's 10 deaths, how many are exclusive to the coronavirus? And how many are linked to second or third kind of chronic
Well, that
diseases?
doesn't. What'll happen is in the next couple of months, all these things will start shifting. The narrative will start changing when the algorithms change, and then we'll be talking about how we've overreacted to this thing and how the economy is so messed up and how it's, beyond repair. It's just a frightening proposition.
No, and if you look at, I mean, we're talking sport and we're talking rugby, that SA Rugby at this stage, I think they've looked to cut for 1.2 billion off the year. And where can they afford that? No one can afford that kind of thing, So it's and especially with the rand value at the moment, trying to keep players in this country, which makes it a miracle that Peter Steph du Toit has stayed for.
Well, it's a good thing he has, because the rand has improved by 15%. I'm not sure that was directly related to Peter Steph du Toit, but he made himself a bit of money. Yeah. Anyway, Mark, I thank you for coming in again, and appreciate the talk. And hope the rugby starts soon, and hope we get to see some fans in the stadium.
Thanks.